was seen in Petare at just before midnight after Venezuela's socialist candidates won the elections for 17 out of 23 state governors. Live from Quito, Ecuador, I'm Soini Gray, and this is From the South, the daily news brief from Tell Us Your English. We start this new edition right now. It's a landslide. That's how President Nicolas Maduro reacted to the news that candidates from his United Socialist Party, the PSU, had won the governorships in the immediate majority of Venezuela's 23 states. As the results came out, government supporters went wild with delight across the country. This was the scene that Telesur captured in one of the country's largest working-class neighborhoods, Petare, in the east of the capital. President Nicolas Maduro joined his supporters outside the Miraflores Palace to welcome what he called a crushing victory.
61.4, que anoten en Washington.
61.4 turnout. Washington, take note of that. Secondly, at the moment we have 17 governorships, an absolute victory. Chavismo has swept the board with 17. The opposition have 5. And now, I tell you, I recognize all the results of the elections in all the announcements from the National Electoral Council, a victory in 17 governorships. We have complete faith in the transparency of the electoral system, so I asked the head of the National Constituent Assembly to order an audit of the electoral process from A to Z, a complete audit.
So, let's take a look at the results announced by the National Electoral Council. With almost 96% of the ballots counted, candidates from the governing PSUV had won in 17 of Venezuela's 23 states. Those are the ones in red on this map. The opposition had won in 5 states, the blue ones. That is 2 more than they had before and includes the important border states of Zulia and Táchira. The result in Bolivar State in the southeast is still too close to call. Just to put those results in context, here's some quick other facts about Sunday's regional elections in Venezuela. The turnout was higher than usual, over 61%, 7% more than in the last regional elections, that's out of 18 million possible voters. Candidates from the governing Socialist Party took 54% of the total vote compared with 45% for the opposition. And finally, Sunday's elections was the 23rd of its kind since the beginning of Venezuela's Bolivarian Revolution. The Cuban president Raul Castro also sent his greetings to the Venezuelan people after the elections. In a public statement, Castro said to Maduro, "I congratulate you for the results of the regional elections. Venezuela has given once more a lesson of peace, democracy, courage, and dignity. Chavez's legacy is alive, and Fidel would be very proud of this victory. May you always count on Cuba's support and solidarity." Sunday's results in Venezuela have been welcomed in other parts of Latin America as well. The Bolivarian president, Evo Morales, tweeted his congratulations to the Venezuelan people. He said that democracy has prevailed over intervention and conspiracy. Former president of Honduras, Manuel Zelaya, also tweeted that this was another great victory for the Socialist Party and a defeat for the aims of the United States and Venezuela's extreme right. And finally, ex-president of Ecuador, Rafael Correa, also published on his Twitter account, "Venezuela lived a festival of democracy. The Bolivarian Revolution won big in regional elections. Glory to its people." And the U.S. ambassador to the United States, Nikki Haley, has rejected the results in Venezuela. Haley wrote on her Twitter, "An election is only legitimate if it's free and fair from the start. This was neither." However, Some opposition candidates have accepted the results. Lilly Gomez of the opposition Democratic Action Party won the race in Teixeira. She said she saw no sign of irregularities and that in her state the people had expressed their will. Our correspondent in Caracas, Regan Devines, joins us live now. Hello, Regan.
Hi, Sonny. Good to see you. Yes, we've recently heard that one opposition party members are accepting the results of yesterday's historic regional elections, where we saw the leading PSUV party take 17 states. We saw the opposition Mud Coalition take 5, and we're still awaiting the results from one of those states, the state of Bolivar, which is there was some confusion and some issues with machinery there yesterday, and that's being resolved, but we should get the results of that soon. So we've had this contention among the opposition party members that make up the Mud Coalition. They've always been at odds in terms of how to run their party, what priorities they should place first, how they would govern, were they to ever win an election. And this latest one, of course, is whether or not they should accept the election results. Before, of course, they said that they would not allow themselves to be sworn in front of the National Constituent Assembly, which President Maduro said you needed to be if you were to become governor of your state. So there's a bit of contention within their ranks, and I suppose they're working this out. Just to give our viewers just to refresh their memories, yesterday we saw an historic turnout at regional elections. 61.4% of the electorate turned out to vote. 75% of them voted for the ruling PSUV party. And so this was beyond historic. And today the mood has been one of celebrations, been quite high in energy for those who approve of this result. Since last night, we've been seeing a party in the street. Chavistas, which is what government supporters are called, are known for this type of revelry when they are called to the streets to support their leaders. Yesterday, an important presence was those of the international observers throughout Latin America. They came from the United States and from the UK. They came to take a look at the elections to see if everything is being done above board by the National Electoral Council, the CNE, and of course they'll be giving the CNE notes. I suppose that would start from today, giving them notes, if there are notes, in terms of how this process can be improved. I spoke to a few of them yesterday, and they expressed pride, not just pride. They were impressed with how the system was being run, especially since they had heard so much coming from outside of Venezuela. We filmed a few of them yesterday. Take a look.
The celebrations were everywhere. After Venezuelans took to the polls to vote in highly contested regional elections, winning 17 seats for the ruling government party, the PSUV, nothing could stop the music. Yet already the losing Mud Coalition party is crying foul.
At this time, we don't recognize any results.
This without proof of fraud and after having took part in initial audit processes. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro says this is no surprise. He's already called for a recount to fortify his party's historic win. Meanwhile, international observers to the regional elections call Venezuela's one of the world's best.
In all of the stations, all of the centers we have visited, it has been very, very peaceful, very orderly.
Even hailing it as an example of democracy at work.
It's really quite the opposite of everything that we hear on CNN and on Fox News and the entire gamut of the U.S. mainstream media, which only says negative things about Venezuela. So I think it's important to put out an alternative idea of what Venezuelan democracy looks like.
Regan Devines for Telesur English in Caracas, Venezuela.
And so, yes, that's a bit of what we saw yesterday. They came out, they took their notes, they witnessed what was happening, and they had some good words for the CNE and the work that was done, Sonia.
Thank you so much for that update, Regan. It's really good seeing you, but thank you for that report. More news in a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back. Dominica is still recovering from Hurricane Maria that hit the island on September 17. During his daily press briefing, the island's Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit called on the general public to work with the government to help the country move forward.
What we say and what we do as a people will determine how fast we recover from this hurricane. And our efforts, we'll all have different views as to what should be done, how it should be done, when it should have been done, who should have done it. But at the end of the day, it is not finger pointing that's going to push this country forward. It is not finger pointing that's going to make our country a better place. It is about we working together with a common purpose and a common determination.
And still on the subject of hurricanes Irma and Maria, we head to Antigua and Barbuda, where the government says that a Chinese firm has shown interest in establishing a town in Barbuda. Barbuda was severely damaged by Irma last month, which left the island uninhabitable for the first time in 300 years. According to the government statement, the unidentified Chinese firm has proposed to build high-rise apartment buildings that could resist hurricane winds exceeding 200 miles per hour. And in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria, Telesio has been traveling across Puerto Rico to talk to locals about their view on the assistance or lack thereof from Washington.
Although Hurricane Maria passed over Puerto Rico weeks ago, its effects are still being felt nationwide. The country's communications are not fully functioning, and millions are still without electricity. And this is expected to continue to at least the end of the year. Outside of San Juan, this is what we saw.
All of us in the neighborhood were so united when the disaster happened. We all gathered to clean the roads and clear the debris. We have been together throughout this all, but it is hard to see how everything was left and how we are not receiving any help from anyone else.
The damages are estimated to be in the hundreds of millions. Infrastructure has been obliterated. And for the people in Puerto Rico, the main thing that they need is basic support and basic aid, such as food and water.
Here there's no electricity. Look at the light pole. We don't have any water or electricity here, and we haven't seen anyone fix it or clearing up the debris. We haven't seen water, just the water trucks that are helping us now.
The support from the White House seems to follow the unpredictability of Donald Trump, his tweets and his actions, day in, day out. This is what the majority of the island's inhabitants think, and they are doing their best to overcome the tragedy.
Trump came to insult the Puerto Ricans. This is what I think. I don't know what the others think. We, the Puerto Ricans, feel offended because of the things he said.
Even though Puerto Ricans are officially United States citizens, they are a free and associated state, and they are waiting for more assistance from Washington to help them in the wake of the hurricane.
Never in all of my life could I have imagined that we, the youth, could have lived through something like this. I'm only 19 years old. I couldn't have thought that anything like this would happen.
Maria was one of the strongest hurricanes to hit the island in the last 80 years. And it has not only affected the people on the island, but it has also shed light on the complex political relationship between the island and other nations in the continent.
A group of Chilean and international experts are meeting in Santiago to present the results of their investigations into the death of the poet Pablo Neruda in 1973. The forensic experts from Canada, Denmark, the US, Spain and Chile have been examining a range of evidence. The family of Neruda, one of Latin America's best-known writers, believe he was poisoned because of his opposition to the military coup led by Augusto Pinochet. Our correspondent in Santiago, Francisca Castillo, has the details.
The investigation into the death of Nobel Literature Laureate and active member of the Communist Party, Pablo Neruda, continues. Today, several international and local experts are meeting to discuss and analyze the scientific evidence that the judge in charge, Mario Carosa, requested. We have to remember that this case has been in court for over 6 years, time that has revealed a series of background elements that led some people to conclude that Pablo Neruda was murdered by agents of the military coup. However, there is still no conclusive proof to confirm this. We have to remember that Neruda died just a few days after the military coup in Chile. That's why the investigation continues, and today experts from the United States, Canada, Denmark and Chile are meeting to present their theories at the end of this week to the Minister Mario Carosa, who will continue to work on this investigation.
Thank you so much for that report, Francesca. In the province of El Chacao in the north of Argentina, a 3-day women's meeting is coming to an end. More than 1,200 groups have been taking part in the 32nd Women's National Meeting, with a total of more than 70,000 participants, the biggest so far. On Sunday, they marched from the National Northeast University to Democracy Park. They demanded the declaration of an emergency law against gender violence and the full application of the gender identity law, as well as quotas for transgender people. Gender violence has been on the rise in Brazil, but a new app aims to provide women with at least some protection from a culture steeped in sexism. It's called Femitaxi, and it's meant to allow women to travel in safety and comfort.
Gender violence has been on the rise in Brazil, but a new app aims to provide women with at least some protection from a culture steeped in machismo. It's called Femitaxi, and it's meant to allow women to travel in safety and comfort. In Sao Paulo alone, reports of attempted rape and sexual assault have risen by over 10% this last year, and regular taxis are one of the worst places for such crimes. Many women feel safer traveling with a female driver.
Separating men and women isn't a permanent solution. If we don't understand that we are different, we will always be separated. I think that the taxi is a tool to fight for space, to show my work, so I can be seen as a worker and not an object. When Femitaxi appeared, it provided me safety during a time when I didn't have the support of being seen as a worker. So we women are helping each other. We stand to show society that we can also do this job.
Femitaxi now has 1,000 drivers and provides more than 20,000 rides per month in 6 cities across the country. Founder Charles Henrique Calfat said he plans to expand into 2 more Brazilian cities in coming months, then Mexico and Argentina early next year.
More news after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. 2 Catalan Independence leaders have been jailed by a Spanish court. Jordi Sanchez and Jordi Cuixart are being held without bail on charges of sedition. The move is expected to inflame tensions between Barcelona and Madrid ahead of Thursday's deadline for the Catalan president to withdraw any declaration of independence. Our Joan Ortiz sent this report earlier.
¿Qué tal, Adriana? Saludos. ¿Cómo estás aquí? Bueno, novedades las que hemos ido contando y en esta...
The news that we have right now is that here in the region there is a sense of calm, albeit tense. This feeling will probably remain until next Thursday at 10 in the morning, which is the second time that Spanish Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy gave to Carles Puigdemont to withdraw his declaration of independence, because last week Rajoy asked Puigdemont to confirm whether or not he actually did declare independence, since Puigdemont suspended it after the results of the referendum. This was his question in relation to the activation of Article 155 of the Spanish Constitution. Carles Puigdemont hasn't yet said yes or no, but he did say it could take up 2 months. The Catalonian leader also asked Rajoy to stop the police violence and repression in the region and insisted that a date be set as soon as possible to start the dialogue. This was all sent in a letter from Puigdemont to Mariano Rajoy. In the 2-page document, the word dialogue appears 6 times, which is an evidence of Puigdemont's intentions. But nevertheless, coming from Madrid, the government has announced that they will not proceed into dialogue. They are only interested in whether independence was declared or not. And also this morning, we have heard that Carles Puigdemont is not able to ask for dialogue with Madrid because he's doing so outside of the Constitution. That means that in Madrid, they see Catalonia stuck in a limbo. This is why the central government is asking them to return to dialogue via the constitutional framework to be able to officially request dialogue with Madrid. And this is not considering all of the other occasions where, within the Constitution, Catalonia has requested dialogue without any response from Madrid. And this is the argument that the coup uses to tell Puigdemont that there is no possibility of dialogue while they are within Spain, and that what actually need to do is to talk face to face. Meanwhile, in the rest of Europe, the same idea remains, which is that dialogue between Catalonia and Madrid must happen within the Constitution, and currently that is a national issue. We also have to remember that a few hours ago, Claude Juncker, the president of the European Commission, said that he doesn't want to see a Europe made up of 98 states in a few years. And he doesn't want Catalonia to have a domino effect over other regions that are today asking for their own sovereignty. In any case, that is what's happening here. Mariano Rajoy is asking for an answer from Puigdemont. The Catalonian leader responded, but it wasn't what Rajoy wanted to hear. There is a new deadline for Puigdemont's response next Thursday at 10 a.m. We will see what happens until then. Meanwhile, the day after tomorrow, Catalonia's parliament will reconvene as usual, and they will discuss regional politics, not necessarily the independence question. We are still waiting to see if the coup will attend the session or not, as they said that they do not want to discuss any independence policies. This decision will make it difficult for the independence bloc to make any decisions, as they're the majority, but with the coup they will be the absolute majority. So we will have to see what the independence bloc can do with the absolute majority. It is difficult, nevertheless, that in this upcoming session a new vote in favor of independence is requested again, because as the coup said, if Article 155 is applied, Catalonia could be declared independent. This is the news at the moment from Catalonia.
Es difícil, sin embargo, que a lo largo de este pleno se pida la votación a favor de la independencia y se declare, por más que, como decía la CUP, pide que si se aplica un artículo 100.
That report from Joan Ortiz in Barcelona. At least 27 people have been killed in northern and central Portugal as wildfires sweep through the region. More than 6,000 firefighters battled around 500 separate wildfires overnight. It's said to be the highest number of fires in more than 10 years. Portugal's government has declared a state of emergency and hinted that the fires may have been started deliberately. 64 people were killed last June in Portugal in a previous round of wildfires. A further 4 people are reported to have died in neighboring Spain as the fire spread across the border. Telesiu's Romina Piñate sent this report from Oporto in northern Portugal.
Saludos a toda nuestra audiencia. Me encuentro en Oporto, al noroeste de Portugal.
I am in Oporto, in the northeast of Portugal, and this fog you see behind me are now clouds. It's smoke from the hundreds of fires reported over the weekend in the center and north of Portugal, and also in the northwest of Spain, in Galicia. More than 500 fires have been reported in Portugal, and an estimated 150 in Galicia. According to Portugal's civil defense, over 30 people have died because of these fires, and over 50 are injured. 15 of these are in critical condition. In Galicia, we can also count 4 people dead because of the fires. In Galicia, there's still at least 60 active spots, some of them very close to population centers, very close to cities and developments. And here in Portugal, there are still over 100 active spots. The most dangerous area is very near Coimbra, an area with a population of over 130,000 inhabitants. And we are still don't know what the causes of these fires. But the president of Junta de Galicia, Feijóo, has said it's incendiary tourism. But there are many of the other causes. For example, the Iberian Peninsula is suffering a severe drought, and that at this point, the Junta of Galicia let go over 436 firefighters who could have been able to help with the fires. This is what we have here at the moment. We'll continue to follow this. We're in Oporto right now, and we're heading north towards Vigo, in the northeast of Spain, and we'll be keeping you informed.
La Junta de Galicia despedía a 436 brigadistas.
Romina Pinate reporting from Oporto in Portugal. So, let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines around the world.
Iraqi security forces have moved into the disputed northern province of Kirkuk, seizing a military base, an airport and an oil field from Kurdish fighters. The offensive comes after the controversial Kurdish independence referendum held in late September, where the Kurds won a resounding yes vote for independence in the semi-autonomous north of the country. Since then, tensions between Baghdad and Erbil have been high. The oil-rich province of Kirkuk was taken by Kurdish forces after Iraqi security forces fled the region following the success of the Islamic State's advance back in 2014. Austria's right-leaning parties won big in Sunday's legislative elections, paving the way for the normalization of anti-immigration populism and nationalism within European politics. The incumbent foreign minister, 31-year-old Sebastian Kurz, is on track to become the youngest leader within the European Union, after his Conservative People's Party, otherwise known as the OVP, won 31.4% of the vote. Residents in the capital of Vienna expressed mixed feelings over the election result.
I think it's a pity that the Greens did not get into parliament, but it is their own fault. The rest of results were expected, except what has changed is that the red are now ahead of the blue, and now it's all more dynamic again. As the party leaders say, the voter is right, but we have to see where this takes us.
Protests have continued in Nairobi as supporters of the opposition decry the lack of reforms ahead of the upcoming rerun of the presidential election. Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga withdrew from the election due to the failed reforms and has urged his supporters to protest despite a government-imposed ban on demonstrations across the country. Last August's election was annulled by the Supreme Court after irregularities were suspected. A rerun of the election is set to take place on October 26. However, no official has yet been removed from the electoral board. Vietnam has been bracing itself for more storms as northern and central parts of the country continue to recover from last week's floods, which claimed the lives of 72 people. Last week's storms caused landslides and flash flooding, which destroyed thousands of homes in one of the country's worst weather disasters in years.
Since the flooding, we have had no water or food. We couldn't get out to buy food. We've just been here in the house. We have no money to buy a boat to get out, and we couldn't ask anyone for help.
We've come to the end of this evening's news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesyourtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I am Soyuni Gray. Thank you so much for watching.